Chapter 261. Isfred and her team, who were standing behind Dustin, had it worse. They had difficulty breathing and staggered backward involuntarily. Is this what a divine-level martial artist is like? How frightening. The crowd looked at each other in apprehension, silently worried. Fool. Dustin sneered coldly at Joshua's oncoming attack and made a move, landing a fierce slap on his face. The thunderous slap sent Joshua into a backflip in the air, and he landed headfirst onto the ground. At that moment, everyone was stunned into oblivion. What the fuck? Everyone was shaken by the abrupt scene. No one could have imagined that the previously heroic Joshua would fall by Dustin's slap, and they wondered if it was a coincidence or an accident. Josh. Jade and Tina's expression paled as they rushed up to him. They helped him up to his feet while he was still feeling dizzy. Josh, are you all right? Jade was taken aback and worried. What happened just now? Joshua shook his head, appearing dazed. Everything happened so suddenly that he didn't notice Dustin's movements. He only felt his sight go dark, and the next thing he knew, he was thrown to the ground. You were beaten to the ground by that bastard, Jade explained with a strange expression. No. That's impossible. Joshua could never believe it. How could he have hit me? I must have slipped and fell on my own. That's right. You must have slipped. Tina nodded furiously beside him. Kiddo. That didn't count. Let's go again. Joshua couldn't admit defeat. With a tap of his feet, he launched himself out again. Another clear, booming slap rang out before he was launched back with even greater speed. Joshua suffered a crushing defeat and was badly battered. Novelban. The crowd was shocked once again. They could have explained his first victory as the result of a coincidence or accident. But the second victory was absolutely remarkable. Let her go, Dustin spat out coldly. Why you've gone too far. I won't be able to sleep if I don't kill you right now. Joshua flew into a rage and pushed the two women beside him away, launching himself toward Dustin for the third time. This time, instead of his empty lists, he took out a dagger from his waist. With a weapon in hand, his attack would be exceedingly lethal. Go to hell. As he drew near, Joshua swung his dagger forcefully. A sharp whistle was heard, and only the gleam of the dagger was seen. It aimed toward Dustin's forehead with fierce velocity. Dustin stood still, allowing the incoming assault to occur. With a loud bang, the dagger exploded as it came into contact with his forehead, dissipating into sparks of light. What? Joshua's pupils dilated in horrified shock. How was that possible? Dustin had taken his slash head-on, literally. But Joshua was the divine-level martial artist. Any slash of his would break open boulders. Even a block of steel would slice in half with his previous attack, but Dustin blocked that attack with his head. Impossible. I must have been mistaken. Joshua shook his head furiously, unable to believe it. Chapter 262. Joshua gritted his teeth and brandished his dagger again. Die. He exerted all his strength into this attack, channeling every ounce of his internal energy. He believed Dustin wouldn't be able to block the attack even if he was made of steel. HMPH. Dustin had clearly lost his patience. As he watched the oncoming assault, he moved and grabbed the blade firmly. Tightening his grip, two crisp metallic crunches were heard, and the dagger made of refined iron was crushed into pieces. What? Joshua was bewildered. Before Joshua reacted, Dustin extended out his arm again, pressing a finger on his chest. Boom. The next second, it felt as if his bones had disintegrated as he fell limp to the ground. Feeling numb all over, he couldn't move an inch. What did you do to me? Joshua was shocked and horrified. He never dreamed that he would be defeated by an unknown kid. He was a divine-level martial artist. Boulder Thorn's direct disciple. He should have been invincible in Swinton after his return. Why? Why couldn't he even defeat this punk? Where the hell did he come from? Let her go. Dustin ignored him, looking at him condescendingly from above as if he was looking at an ant. Punk. You can't be my opponent. What trick did you use? Joshua still couldn't believe it. He couldn't accept that a small fry like Dustin would destroy an exceptional fighter like him. You speak too much nonsense. Dustin was irritated and stomped violently on Joshua's knees. With a crisp crack, his knees sprayed blood everywhere. Joshua screamed in agony as his face contorted in pain and beads of sweat dripped down from his face. How dare you! You insolent bastard! When they saw Joshua getting injured, the crowd erupted in anger. A large number of the Hummer family's guards swarmed in from different directions, surrounding Dustin in no time. These guards were armed with guns. They had clearly made preparations in advance. Rhys, let go of my brother. Otherwise, after my command, you will be shot to oblivion. Tina screeched, putting on a front. Even though Dustin was powerful, he was still a mass of flesh that could get injured and bleed. With so many armed guards surrounding him, he wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. Fire if you dare. I'd like to see who'd die first. Dustin remarked coldly, without a hint of fear. You. Fire. Tina was exasperated. Since Joshua was right beside Dustin, he would also get shot if they opened. Dustin Rhys. We're in Hummer Villa. This is not a place for you to behave atrociously. Let him go. Otherwise, you will regret it. Jade's expression was stone cold. She didn't expect Joshua to be defeated by Dustin either. However, in this world, bravery changed nothing. Power was more important. Joshua had the Hummer family and Boulderthorn behind him. After she married him, he would also have the support of the Grant family. Who would dare challenge him then? I'll regret it. I'd like to see how much I'll regret it. As he spoke, he stomped on Joshua's other leg, breaking it. Chapter 263. After a short moment of astonishment, Joshua let out an ear-piercing scream. He sounded like a pig sent for slaughter. How dare you, you imbecile! Edwin's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He couldn't believe Dustin had the guts to chop Joshua's arm off in front of everyone. He'd crossed the line. How dare you harm Josh? Jade shrieked. How could a peasant like Dustin dare to rebel against them like this? Did he have a death wish? Rhys. You're dead meat. Tina screeched. Dustin had humiliated her before. Now, Joshua was the one suffering. How could the Hummer family possibly face the world if they didn't get revenge for this? Let her go, Dustin said coldly. Fuck you. You have hell to pay for harming my brother. Tina snarled. Dustin didn't waste his breath. Instead, he brandished his sword and swung it lightly, slicing Joshua's other arm off. Blood splattered over the floor, and Joshua's right arm landed in a pool of it. He howled again, his face contorting in a mask of pain. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Now, he was no different from a lamb up for slaughter. His earlier arrogance and dominance had dissipated. You abomination. How dare you? This is outrageous. Dustin's second attack brought about more furious exclamations. It was bad enough that he chopped Joshua's left arm off. He'd now made things worse by chopping off the right one as well. It was an insult to the Hummer family's dignity and pride. Amidst their fury, the members of the Hummer family came to a conclusion: Dustin was a madman. Let her go. Dustin brandished his sword again. This time, he pressed it to Joshua's neck. The cold, steely look in his eyes made the onlookers subconsciously shudder. They'd seen their fair share of nefarious characters, but this was their first time coming into contact with the cold, inhumane look in Dustin's eyes. He wasn't mad, nor had he raised his voice. On the contrary, he'd been calm and collected throughout the whole exchange. However, the more he acted like that, the more terrifying it was. There was no doubt in everyone's minds that he would behead Joshua if the Hummer family didn't do as he said. Let her go. Edwin forced out through gritted teeth, ultimately choosing to give in. He couldn't take this bet, not with Joshua's life on the line. He'd already witnessed how ruthless Dustin could be. Dad. Tina couldn't believe her ears. Were they, the almighty Hummer family, going to give in to a brat? I said, let her go. Edwin turned to bellow at her. Nothing mattered more than Joshua's life. Tina bit her lip and loosened Natasha's ties. As soon as she was free, Natasha gave Tina 2 tight slaps. Tina stared at her, dumbfounded. That's only the interest you owe me. I'll collect the rest of my debt later. With that, she turned and strutted toward Dustin. She'd never been the type to suffer in silence since she'd been slapped. She had to return the favor. Why? Tina gnashed her teeth, looking humiliated. Dustin and Natasha were too obnoxious for words. Chapter 264. Dustin, we've already let her go, so it's your turn. Edwin tried his best to suppress his rage. If not for Dustin pulling such dirty tricks, he wouldn't be in this situation. I didn't say anything about letting anyone go. Dustin obviously wasn't going to let the matter slide. You abducted Ms. Harmon and harmed members of the Harmon family. Do you think I'll let you off the hook so easily? Rhys, I'm warning you, don't take this too far. An ugly look crept onto Edwin's face. This is the Hummer family's territory. You're dreaming if you think you can walk out of here unscathed. Now, I'm giving you a chance. Let Josh go, and I won't begrudge you for everything that's happened before this. Otherwise, you won't step a foot out of here without getting injured. Jade added, he's right. Let Josh go, or you'll be making an enemy out of the Grant family. Dustin didn't say anything and glanced at Natasha. If she were to give the order, he'd behead Joshua without batting an eye. However, Natasha said calmly, losing both arms is good enough to teach him a lesson. Leave him alive for now. She wanted nothing more than to kill Joshua, but he was an esteemed disciple of the Boulderthorn Guild and Jade's fiancé. If she were to take his life, she'd only be causing trouble for herself. Dustin would also become public enemy number 1 to the Boulderthorn Guild and the Grand family. Things wouldn't be so easily resolved then. Dustin nodded. All right. I can let him live, but he still has to pay for what he's done. With that, he kicked Joshua in the abdomen, sending him flying as he howled in pain. Edwin and the others cried out his name and ran over to him, helping him up. He spat out a mouthful of blood as his face contorted in a mask of pain. He forced out through gritted teeth, Dad, he destroyed my cultivation. That earlier kick had shattered his core. What? Edwin and the others were horrified. Joshua would be no different from a cripple with his cultivation and core destroyed. Edwin's eyes bulged with rage as he roared. How dare you ruin my son's future, you brat. They could find a way to reattach Joshua's limbs, but there was no way to recover from a shattered core. Dustin, you and your whole family is dead meat. From this day onward, you're the Grant family's biggest enemy. I'll chase you to the ends of the earth. Jade shrieked, her face filled with deep hatred. Joshua had been her ticket to a great future. Dustin's kick had ruined everything. I bet you didn't think karma would come back to bite you in the ass when you bullied and murdered innocents. Dustin said coolly. What goes around comes around. Since you committed crimes against others, I'm here to commit crimes against you and give you a taste of your own medicine. Dustin Rhys. From this day onward, the Hummer family, the Grant family, and the Boulderthorn Guild will be out for your blood. We won't rest until you're dead. Edwin roared. Come at me with everything you have. I'd like to see what you have in store for me. Dustin didn't even flinch. He would have beheaded Joshua with the first swing of his sword if not for the consequences it would bring Natasha. Then again, he didn't intend to let the Hummer family off the hook. If they really chased him to the ends of the earth, he'd eradicate them. Shoot him. Hurry. Tina shrieked. Yes, Mom. A team of gun-wielding bodyguards cocked the guns and aimed them at Dustin. However, before they could pull the trigger, Dustin swung his sword. A beam of light shot toward the bodyguards, slicing them clear through their waists. In that instant, pained cries pierced the air. That was only a portion of Dustin's ability, and he'd taken out more than 20 people with a single swing of his sword. Everyone else was dumbfounded. They didn't dare move. Let's go. Dustin didn't linger. He kept an eye on Natasha and the others to ensure their safety while walking out. Tonight, he'd single-handedly dealt a devastating blow to the Hummer family. He was invincible. Chapter 265. As they walked out of Hummer Villa, Natasha, who'd put up a strong front earlier, suddenly felt her knees buckle under her. She almost fell flat on her face. Dustin quickly caught her and asked worriedly, "Are you okay? Do you feel sick?" "No. I'm just out of strength. My knees feel like jelly." She shook her head. She'd been on edge earlier. Now that she could relax, she felt weak. "Ms. Harmon, I'll carry you." Istrud stepped forward and volunteered to help her. "I don't want to inconvenience you when you're seriously injured," Natasha said. "I'm fine. These injuries mean nothing." Istrud patted her chest to show she was okay. "You're seriously injured if I say so." Natasha's tone suddenly became stern. She glared at Iserid. Huh. The realization dawned on Istrud when she glanced at Dustin. "Oh. Yeah. I feel really dizzy. I'll do it." Dustin looked helpless as he swept Natasha into his arms. She had a strong personality but was only an ordinary woman. She had to be in shock after experiencing an abduction. "Thanks for tonight." Natasha smiled sweetly and leaned her head against his firm chest. His masculine pheromones made her heart race. Perhaps this was what people meant when they talked about a sense of security. "It's no big deal. I couldn't stand by and watch when a friend's in trouble, right?" Dustin smiled. "Am I only a friend?" Natasha raised an eyebrow, looking slightly bitter. "What else could you be?" Dustin pretended not to know what she was talking about. "HMPH. You're so dense." Natasha frowned and chomped down on his shoulder. Dustin hissed in pain but didn't dare retaliate. "This is a mark I'm leaving on you. You belong to me for as long as this is around. I'll bite you to death if you dare reject me." She bared her teeth as she spoke. Dustin grimaced but didn't dare say anything to refute her. He savored the feeling of her soft and pliant body in his arms. He couldn't help feeling aroused as her sweet scent enveloped him. They hadn't known each other long, but he'd unknowingly started to fall for the vivacious woman. That was why he'd been so anxious when he heard about her being abducted. It was also why he'd devastated the Hummer family. At this moment, Hummer Villa was in a mess. Dustin had crashed the place and slaughtered their men with a single blade, even crippling Joshua, who was the Hummer family's pride and joy. The Hummer family's dignity and arrogance had been flung to the ground and repeatedly stomped on. "Dad, I'm crippled." Joshua howled as he lay in bed. With his core shattered and cultivation destroyed, his life was over. "Josh, don't panic. I'll immediately have our men search for a miracle doctor. I guarantee I'll spare no expense and pay any price to have you cured," Edwin said. Jade nodded vigorously. "He's right, Josh. You'll definitely recover from this. The Grant family has an abundance of rare medicines. I'm sure they'll help to restore your core. A full recovery isn't the only thing I want. I also want to get revenge. I want that Rhys brat to pay for this." Joshua snarled. "Don't worry, I've already informed Mark about this. He'll be here in no time. That brat will be dead meat when Mark arrives," Jade said. "Mark." A trace of hope flashed in Joshua's eyes at this. No matter how powerful the brat is, he's no match for Mark. Joshua had only achieved divinity a few days ago. He'd yet to fully adapt to this change, and his foundation had been shaky. That was why he could only manifest 50 to 60% of his abilities. Marcus Kent, on the other hand, had already achieved divinity 3 years ago and had even ranked among the heavenly immortals. He was more than enough to deal with Dustin. Killing him swiftly would be letting him off easy. "I say we go after everyone related to him so that he can see what it's like to be public enemy number one." Tina spat. "You're right. Issue an order for everyone to focus on catching Dustin and his posse. Whoever brings me his head on a platter will receive a reward of $1 billion," Edwin commanded. With that, everyone in the Hummer family got to work. As the word spread, everyone was raring to go, especially when they heard about the reward. At Park Place, Jessica paced the living room, looking worried. Ruth also fidgeted restlessly, obviously anxious. Quentin was the only one who looked unruffled. In truth, he'd been delighted by the news of Natasha's abduction. If anything were to happen to her, there was a high chance of him taking over the company. Of course, in a best-case scenario, both Dustin and Natasha would die at Hummer Villa. That way, Quentin would finally have gotten his revenge. Mrs. Harmon. The butler ran into the living room. So, is there any news on Natasha? Jessica's heart leaped to her throat. Though she believed the Hummers wouldn't do anything rash, she couldn't be absolutely sure. The shadow guards just sent word back that Ms. Harmon's been rescued. She's a little roughed up but is fine as a whole, the butler said. That's great. Jessica heaved a sigh of relief, looking joyful. I knew she'd be fine. How could anything happen to her? Ruth laughed. Quentin gnashed his teeth, looking pissed. He'd stuck around for so long to receive such terrible news. What was wrong with the Hummer family? How weak could they be, allowing Natasha to get away so easily? As expected, we made the right choice by mobilizing the shadow guards. Otherwise, this rescue mission wouldn't have been so successful. Jessica smiled. Mrs. Harmon, the shadow guards weren't the ones who rescued Ms. Harmon. The butler's expression became a little odd. Who else could it be? Don't tell me the Hummers voluntarily let her go. The Hummers didn't free her of their own volition, and neither did the shadow guards contribute to rescuing Ms. Harmon, the butler said. Mr. Dustin Rhys was the one who single-handedly saved her. He slaughtered Darkrath, Lightrath, Judge, and the Hummer family's elite army. No one in the Hummer family was a match for him. His words dumbfounded Jessica and the others. Dustin had single-handedly defeated so many people. Was he truly human? Chapter 266. The following morning, at Peaceful Medical Center, Dustin got up early, washed up, and started preparing breakfast. As usual, it was his signature dish, deviled eggs. It was simple but smelled amazing. He'd just brought the food to the dining table when someone walked in. Wow, that smells great. It was Dahlia. Today, she wore a smart suit and heels. Her hair was in a ponytail, revealing her fair and slender neck. She looked happy to see the food. Are those deviled eggs? How did you know I hadn't had breakfast yet, Dustin? Since you prepared this for me, I won't stand on ceremony. She sat down and started to dig in. This isn't. Dustin was about to say something when his bedroom door swung open to reveal a gorgeous woman standing there. Darling, I'm starving. Is breakfast ready yet? It was Natasha. She had on an oversized shirt. As she stretched, it dipped to reveal her cleavage. She and Dahlia met each other's gaze. They were both equally stunned. What are you doing here? They asked simultaneously. The air crackled with electricity, and the tension was so thick one could slice it with a knife. Dustin, what's going on here? Dahlia looked hostile. She could tell that Natasha was wearing Dustin's shirt. That, coupled with the fact that Natasha was coming out of Dustin's room, was more than enough for even a fool to tell that something was afoot. Don't get the wrong idea. It's not what you think. Dustin wanted to explain, but Natasha cut him off. Darling, since she's caught us red-handed, we might as well come clean. There's nothing to hide, anyway. So, you slept with her. Dahlia bit her lip, looking jealous. She'd always thought Dustin could keep it in his pants. She was obviously wrong. Why bother asking when it's obvious? Natasha tugged the shirt lower to reveal more of her cleavage. Nothing of the sort happened. Dustin felt a headache coming on. Ms. Harmon was injured yesterday, so I brought her back here to treat her. Nothing else happened. Dahlia took a closer look at Natasha and noticed the wounds on her body. Even so, she couldn't keep the jealousy from her tone as she said, why didn't she go to a hospital if she was injured? Why come here? I can go wherever I want. It's up to me. Natasha smirked. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you two are divorced, right? If so, it's none of your business even if anything were to happen between me and Dustin. So what if we're divorced? We can always remarry. Dahlia glared at her, refusing to back down. Do you think marriage and divorce is a game? What do you take Dustin for? Natasha's smile faded. Ms. Nicholson, one shouldn't be too greedy. Since you're the one who chose to give up, you should bear the consequences accordingly. Everyone makes mistakes. It's fine as long as they realize where they went wrong and correct them. I made a mistake in the past, but now, I'll do whatever I can to make it up to him. Dahlia glanced at Dustin as she spoke, seemingly hinting at something. Since you refuse to give up, let's see who's better at this. Chapter 267. Natasha shrugged and sat at the dining table. She pulled the deviled eggs to her and said with a smile, "Thank you for breakfast, darling. You're so considerate. That's where you're wrong. These eggs are mine." Dahlia pulled the eggs back. It's been 3 years, but I've yet to fall out of love with Dustin's cooking. Besides, he knows I love deviled eggs. Ms. Nicholson, stop thinking so highly of yourself. What's in the past is just that, the past. These eggs belong to me now. Natasha didn't back down. She dragged the eggs to herself again. Ms. Harmon, robbing someone of something they love isn't the best habit to have. These eggs have been cooked to my taste. They only suit me. What makes you think I don't like deviled eggs? I love anything Dustin cooks. HMPH. Just because you like them doesn't mean they suit you. It's up to me to decide whether they're suitable. The conversation between the two women became increasingly heated as they dragged the plate of deviled eggs back and forth. Neither of them wanted to back down. It was as if they'd lose something precious if they were to give in. Dustin felt a headache coming on as he watched them duke it out. Honestly, he didn't think he was worthy of their affection. At the entrance to the guest bedroom, Caitlin stuck her head out to peek at the commotion. She asked in confusion. "Max, what do you think Ms. Harmon and Ms. Nicholson are doing? Do they need to act like this over some eggs?" "Caitlin, you're too young to understand the intricacies of a relationship between a man and a woman," Maximus mysteriously said as he stroked his chin. "They're not fighting over the eggs, but the dignity as women." Dignity. Caitlin still didn't get it. Dustin personally cooked those eggs. Whoever gets to taste them first wins this round. Maximus looked in awe. As expected, he's truly admirable. Beautiful women surround him, yet he remains unaffected by them. Look, they're about to get into a brawl, but Dustin still looks so calm and collected. He truly is someone to look up to. Dustin, with his sharp senses, heard this. He turned around to glare at Mamus and Caitlin. The two heads immediately shot back into the room. A few seconds later, they sneaked out again. "Dustin, you decide. Who do these eggs belong to?" After an inconclusive argument, Natasha and Dahlia turned to look at Dustin. They looked like they wouldn't give up until they had the answer they wanted. Faced with the toughest question he'd ever been asked, Dustin's lips twitched, sweat beaded on his forehead. "These are my eggs," he blurted out. He grabbed the plate and scooped all the eggs into his mouth. With nothing left to fight over, the crisis had been averted. HMPH. The two women glared at each other before turning away in opposite directions, still refusing to give in to each other. As expected of Dustin, only he would have thought of such a great idea. Maximus was in awe of Dustin's ability to avert such a deadly crisis. He wanted to drop to his knees and worship the ground Dustin walked on. He was amazing. Perhaps this was what a true pro was like. Dustin was the first to break the silence after finishing the eggs. "Dahlia, did you come here for something? Do I have to have a purpose for coming here?" Dahlia still looked miffed. No. Dustin looked a little awkward. "I came because we're having guests. You need to meet them with me. In fact, you might make some money from this. I don't want people saying you're leeching off me." Dahlia gave Natasha a pointed look as she spoke. What's wrong with him leeching off someone? Others may not even have the chance to do so. Natasha didn't bat an eye. Before long, the women started squabbling again. Chapter 268. Ms. Nicholson, did you come here because you wanted something from me? Dustin asked when he saw how tense the atmosphere was. What? Do I have to have a reason for coming here? Dahlia glared at him. I didn't mean that. He looked awkward. Whatever. Let's get down to business, drive. Rowan Cross, right. I want to ask him to examine someone. Dahlia stopped beating around the bush. Examine someone. Dustin sized her up, then checked her pulse. Confused, he said, aside from being a little out of whack, you're fine. You just need to control your emotions and diet. Your period. You're the one who's out of whack. Dahlia glared at him again, her face turning red. I didn't say I was the one who needed an examination, it's for a relative of mine who suddenly fainted yesterday. She's been complaining of a headache, but the hospital said she's fine. She wanted drive. Cross to examine just to be sure. I see. Dustin nodded. There's no need to bother drive. Cross for something as simple as that, I'm more than enough. You. Dahlia eyed him doubtfully. Can you handle it? My medical center's been around for a number of years now. Wouldn't it have closed down long ago if I didn't have a few tricks up my sleeve? Dustin said confidently. Dahlia was speechless. She'd never seen any patients in the dingy medical center. How was it different from being closed down? We can forget about it if you don't trust me. Dustin shrugged. Who said anything about me not trusting you? You'll do. Dahlia said decisively. I'll be frank, this relative of mine is a pretty big deal, so if you can cure her, it could be your ticket to success. You won't have to leech off anyone anymore when that happens. As she spoke, she gave Natasha a pointed look. What's wrong with leeching off someone? Natasha puffed out her chest. At least my darling is capable of leeching off someone, others may not be able to do so even if they wanted to. Dahlia snorted. No upstanding man would want to be at a woman's beck and call. Think about how humiliating that'd be. What good is a man for if not to serve a woman? He can't fool around with himself, can he? Natasha rolled her eyes. Why? You. Dahlia was exasperated. How could this woman be so crude? She wasn't ladylike in the slightest. All right, that's enough. We should focus on whatever's ailing your relative. Let's head to the hospital. Dustin quickly interjected when he saw the two women were about to start quarreling again. He dragged Dahlia out of the medical center. Darling, be back soon, okay? I'll be waiting for you. Natasha called, smiling seductively and sending him an air kiss. At the same time, she undid another button on her shirt to reveal more of her cleavage. Dustin stared at her. HMPH. Dahlia stomped on his foot and gave him a warning look. He smiled awkwardly and retracted his gaze. Get in the car. She stuffed him into the car before speeding off. Do you think you stand a chance against me, you flat-chested preteen? Natasha smiled victoriously as she looked down at her voluptuous chest. It was enough to put any woman to shame, and none of her future children would ever go hungry. Half an hour later, in one of the wards at East Swinton Hospital. My head hurts. I feel like it's gonna split in half. Jane lay in a hospital bed and clutched her head, occasionally smacking it to alleviate the pain. Mom, hold on for a little longer. Dr. Cross will be here soon. Dakota kept comforting her. Nobody knew what had happened. Jane had suddenly passed out yesterday and kept complaining about a headache when she'd come to. They'd done all the examinations possible, but the results showed nothing was wrong with her. I shouldn't have come to this accursed place. We've had problem after problem since arriving. First, someone crashed into our car. Then, I got slapped for no reason at all. Now, I'm having a terrible headache. What have I done to deserve this? Jane looked positively miserable. We'll head home once you're okay. We're never coming to this dump again. Dakota said. Then, She turned to Florence, who stood at the ward's entrance, and screeched, "What's taking so long? When is Dr. Cross coming? Tell him to hurry." Of course, of course. Florence didn't dare delay. She hurried out of the ward, took out her phone, and was about to dial a number when she saw two people approaching her, Dahlia and Dustin. "Dahlia, you're finally here." Her face lit up as she hurried toward them. "Your aunt's headache is getting worse, and the doctors here are too useless to do anything about it. Dr. Cross is our only hope now. Where is he?" She looked around but didn't see him. Dahlia shook her head. "He's busy with something else and can't be here." What are we gonna do, then?" Florence was taken aback. Had they waited for nothing? "Dustin has some medical expertise. How about we have him give it a shot?" "Him?" Florence frowned. "Have you lost your mind? How can this good-for-nothing possibly know anything about treating a patient? Who's gonna bear the responsibility if anything goes wrong? He cured Grandad when he was poisoned, remember." "I have faith in him," Dahlia said firmly. She'd misunderstood Dustin one time too many. This time, she chose to trust him unconditionally. "Stop this nonsense. Your grandfather only made it through because of Dr. Cross Hexanavir. It had nothing to do with this man." Florence scowled, looking contemptuous. "Do you have a better idea, then?" Dahlia asked. "Well, Florence had no words. "Since we're out of ideas, why don't we let Dustin try? We can think of something else if it doesn't work." Dahlia's tone became domineering. "Rhys, you'd better watch what you're doing. Don't you dare try to pass just about anything off as a cure," Florence warned. The two people in the ward were her cash cows. If anything were to go wrong, she'd be in big trouble. "Let's see how the patient's doing." Dustin didn't want to waste his breath on her. "HMPH. Come with me." Florence led Dustin and Dahlia into the ward. Once she stepped in, her arrogance faded, replaced with a fawning smile. "Florence, what the hell took you so long? Where is Dr. Cross?" Dakota asked impatiently. "I'm here," Florence said sycophantically, gesturing to the people behind her. "Behold the doctor we've brought." "Huh." Dakota and Jane looked up, then exclaimed in unison. "It's you." Chapter 269. It's you. Dakota was momentarily taken aback when she recognized Dustin. Similarly, he looked at her funny with a hint of astonishment. Never had he expected that the two bitches were the relatives that Dahlia had mentioned to him. What a small world. "Oh. Did you know each other?" Dahlia's quizzical gaze traveled between the two. "Not only are we acquainted," Dakota hissed through clenched teeth, "he's also the guy who beat us up yesterday." "What?" Everyone was surprised to learn that. Dakota, did you get the wrong person?" Florence questioned cautiously. "No. How could I? I'd recognize him even if he turned into ashes. I also suspect my mom's gotten a headache from his slap." Dakota seemed merciless. "Right. I must have fallen sick because of that slap. Get someone to arrest him." Jane was bellowing in bed. She had been unable to put yesterday's events behind her, and she was extremely furious upon meeting her enemy again. "Dustin, what's the matter? Why did you hit them?" Dahlia was baffled to learn that he had a grudge against Jane and Dakota when she introduced him to her Glenstead relatives. "They deserved it," Dustin replied bluntly. "They reversed and crashed into another car, almost killing the victim. But they acted unreasonably like two bullies. I slapped them across their faces because I couldn't stand them anymore." "You rascal. Do you know who they are? How dare you hit them?" Florence was incensed to learn that Dustin had laid a finger on her two goddesses of fortune. She took it as a personal affront as well. "Don't waste your time talking to him. Call the police now." Dakota seethed resentfully. "No. Wait." Dahlia jumped out to stop her. "This might be a huge misunderstanding. There's no need to make this a bigger issue than it is. Why don't we have Dustin work on Aunt Jane's illness to make up for his mistake? HMPH. Nobody needs his help." Jane spat on the ground. Just look at his behavior. What if he makes things worse? Will anyone take the responsibility? That works. I have no intention to cure you either, Dustin said in an unperturbed manner. Oh, by the way, do not forget what I told you before: headaches on the first day, coughing up blood on the second day, and paralysis on the third day. You'll suffer a sudden death on the fourth day. Since today is the second day, it will not take long before you start coughing up blood. By that time, you'll have to leave your fate in the hands of God. Why, you're a jinx. Quit the nonsense. As Jane trembled in anger, her headache worsened as well. See? Did you hear him? How dare he curse my mom? This is an order: get him arrested. If you don't, I'll hold you accountable. Dakota started ordering people around. Florence's face fell, and she yelled at Dustin, Rhys. Apologize to them now. If you don't, I will not go easy on you. Apologize to them. They don't deserve it. Dustin chortled. If anything, they should be apologizing to me. If they do that, I might consider saving the mother. Bullshit. Who do you think you are? You aren't qualified to treat my mom. Yeah. With our status, we can hire any skilled doctors we want. We don't need you showing off here. Jane and Dakota were being stubborn. In their eyes, an ordinary man like Dustin had no business attending to their medical needs. Ha. Sure. Keep being stubborn, I do hope you don't have to beg me in the end. Dustin chuckled with a shake of his head. Beg you? What a joke. Jane sneered. Look, even if I am suffering from a horrible headache or in so much pain to the point of jumping off a building, I still wouldn't give in to you. Okay. We shall see. Without further ado, Dustin took leave. Dahlia frowned at his exit, but after a moment of hesitation, she ran after him. After they left, James brought in an old man dressed in a cloak and dashed into the bedroom. Mom. The skilled doctor you asked for is here. The skilled doctor. Where is he? Florence asked in a hurry. James jumped aside and presented the old man in a cloak, introducing him. This is Dr. Fenton Reyes from Bloomington Medical Center in Estonia. He's a veteran in his field and had ancestors who were royal physicians. No doubt, his skills are legendary. Royal Physicians. Chapter 270. Florence, Jane, and Dakota were delighted by the doctor's presence. They could tell that he came from an impressive background just from how James described him. Jane and Dakota believed they deserved the best, such as seeing a skilled doctor like Fenton Reyes. James. Dr. Reyes is a legend in Estonia. How did you get him to show up? Florence asked curiously. James smiled. Well, it wasn't me. It was Mr. Langford who arranged for Dr. Reyes to see Aunt Jane. Mr. Langford. Florence's eyes lit up upon hearing the name. Louis Langford was an aristocrat from Estonia who wielded great wealth and influence. He was also well connected in the military and the government. More importantly, the Langford family was a close friend of the Nicholson family of Glenstead. Moreover, the Glenstead Nicholsons were greatly interested in an arranged marriage between Louis and Dahlia. In other words, if Dahlia was willing, she could marry into the wealthy Langford family in no time, elevating the entire family to greater heights. That's very thoughtful of Mr. Langford. He immediately asked for a skilled doctor to see my mom after hearing about her sickness. This way, Dr. Reyes. Dakota led the old man to Jane's bed. He asked, Where are you hurting? I have a headache. My head feels like it's splitting in half. Jane scrunched up her face. She seemed feeble and lifeless. I'll take a look. The old man carefully placed his stethoscope on Jane. A few moments later, he replied, There doesn't seem to be an issue. I assume you are just sleep deprived and stressed out. With that, he took out a medicine bottle and poured 3 white pills. Take 1 pill a day for 3 days, and you'll be fine. Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Reyes. Jane was beyond joyful. Florence took the chance to suck up to the doctor. You're indeed the legendary Drive. Reyes. You managed to cure an illness that has gotten many doctors in a bind. HMPH. That Rhys guy was fear-mongering when he said my mom would cough up blood. He's talking crap. A fake like him should be dealt with. Dakota said unhappily. Right. When I'm recovered, I will get him. Jane swallowed a pill. However, her headache only worsened after that, to the point where she was in greater pain and drenched in cold sweat. As she was about to question the doctor, she coughed violently, her face red from the exertion. Mom. What happened? Are you okay? Dakota asked her with concern. Soon, Jane opened her mouth and coughed up a mouthful of blood that splattered across her face. What was that? Everyone in the room was shocked by Jane's declining condition. They exchanged confused glances with each other. A frantic Dakota hurriedly called for the doctor. Doctor. Reyes. What's wrong? Why did she cough up blood? That's odd. I'll take another look. The old man furrowed his brow and went ahead with the checkup. Not long after, his expression became grim as he sighed. I am sorry. Your mother has a terminal illness. She's in the late stage. I'm afraid she doesn't have much time left. Huh. A terminal illness. The people in the room were stunned. Didn't drive Reyes just say that Jane would be lying? Why did he suddenly change his diagnosis? I am not knowledgeable enough to help you with this. I shall take my leave now. The old man hung his head in shame. Then, he shook his head and stood up to leave. The others stared at him agape and panicked soon after. Headaches on the first day, coughing up blood on the second day, and paralysis on the third day. Was that guy right? Jane mumbled to herself and suddenly broke into a scream. Quick! Get Dustin Rhys back here now.